The monitoring station hummed with quiet efficiency, its blue-tinged lights casting long shadows across the sterile chamber where I, Field Observer Keth 9, documented what would become the most significant failure in galactic history. Well, failure from our perspective anyway. The humans? They'd probably call it their finest hour. Typical .my secondary appendages danced across the data streams, recording the final moments of what we'd pompously called the Great Experiment. 300 cycles of careful observation, manipulation, and testing, all culminating in this moment when our test subjects decided to flip the script entirely. You have to admire their audacity, even as it terrifies you to your core. Status report, Keth 9, crackled the voice of High Coordinator Mesh 7 through the communication array. Her tone carried that particular brand of barely contained panic that only comes when your carefully laid plans explode in your face. The humans have achieved faster-than-light travel. I replied, my vocal cords vibrating with what I hoped sounded like professional detachment rather than the bone-deep dread currently coursing through my system. They have also weaponized quantum mechanics, developed artificial intelligence beyond our projections, and somehow managed to reverse engineer our stealth technology from the fragments we deliberately left behind. A pause. The kind of pause that speaks volumes about how spectacularly we'd miscalculated. How? How is that possible? The technology seeds were designed to limit their advancement to pre-galactic civilization levels for at least another 1,000 cycles. I manipulated the holographic interface, pulling up the surveillance data from Earth's final months before their exodus. The images still made my breathing apparatus clench with something approaching admiration. They cheated, Coordinator. They didn't follow our carefully designed technological progression paths. Instead, they took our gifts and improved them. The surveillance recordings played out before me like a horror movie in reverse. There was Marcus Webb, the human military strategist who'd somehow convinced his species' scattered governments to unite under a single banner when our test began showing its true nature. The man had looked directly into one of our hidden cameras 3 months ago and smiled. Actually smiled, as if he'd known we were watching all along. Show me the Webb recordings. Mesh 7's voice cut through my contemplation that I reluctantly activated the sequence. Webb appeared in the command center of what the humans called their Unity Station, surrounded by representatives from every major nation on their planet. His weathered face bore the kind of scars that came from actual combat, not the simulated warfare most species use for training. Real blood, real pain, real experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Webb's voice carried that peculiar human confidence that had first caught our attention centuries ago. Our friends upstairs think they are testing us. They have been dropping technological breadcrumbs for 300 years, watching to see if we will develop into a nice, predictable, spacefaring civilization they can easily manage or eliminate. The room had gone dead silent. Even through our surveillance equipment, the tension was palpable. But here's the thing they don't understand about humans. Webb continued, his grin widening. We don't just adapt to tests. We break them. The recording showed the moment everything changed. Dr. Lisa Park, their lead physicist, stepped forward with a device that should have been impossible given their technological level. It was compact, elegant, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. We call it the Cascade drive, Dr. Park announced. It doesn't just bend space-time for faster-than-light travel. It weaponizes the process. Every jump creates a quantum wake that can disrupt electronic systems across multiple star systems. Any civilization tracking us will find their equipment temporarily inconvenienced. I remember the moment our long-range sensors had registered that first human test jump. Half our monitoring network had gone offline simultaneously. The other half had recorded readings that defied every law of physics we thought we understood. They turned our gift into a weapon. I whispered to Mesh 7. Continue the briefing, Keth 9. The next series of recordings showed the human evacuation. Not the panicked exodus we'd expected when they finally realized they were being watched, but a methodical, military-precise operation that had clearly been planned for months. Entire cities emptied in days. Industrial facilities stripped down and loaded onto massive ships that shouldn't have been able to achieve orbit, let alone interstellar flight. But the moment that truly chilled my circulatory system was when their ships began launching. Thousands of them, all equipped with technology that made our own vessels look like primitive chemical rockets. They didn't flee in random directions like frightened prey. They moved with purpose, coordination, and worst of all, they moved toward us. "Coordinator," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They are not running. They are hunting." The communication array crackled with what might have been Mesh 7's equivalent of a gulp. "Explain." I pulled up the tactical analysis our computers had been running continuously for the past 72 hours. The data painted a picture that violated every assumption we'd made about human behavior under stress. Their fleet movements suggest they have mapped our entire surveillance network. Every monitoring station, every hidden outpost, every supply depot we have established in this sector. They are moving to systematically eliminate our presence in their local star cluster. That's impossible. Our stealth technology was superior to theirs, I corrected. Past tense, coordinator. They have not only detected us, they have apparently been feeding us false information for the better part of cycle. Half the data we have been collecting on their technological development was deliberately falsified. The implications hit both of us simultaneously. If the humans have been manipulating our surveillance for months, what else had they been planning? What other surprises were currently hurtling through space toward our carefully hidden positions? A proximity alarm chose that moment to answer my question. "Coordinator," I said, my voice steady despite the fear flooding my system. "We have incoming human vessels. ETA 14 minutes. Impossible." The nearest human settlement is 6 light years away. Was 6 light years away. I corrected again, watching the sensor readings with a mixture of professional fascination and personal terror. Their ships are moving at speeds that should liquefy any biological crew. Either they have solved the inertial compensation problem in ways we never imagined, or what Keth 9, or they are not entirely biological anymore. The thought hung in the recycled air of my station like a toxic cloud. We've been so focused on testing their technological development that we never considered they might test themselves, enhance themselves, transform themselves into something that could survive journeys that would kill any natural organism. The first human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 light minutes away, its arrival preceded by the same quantum wake that had been wreaking havoc with our equipment for months. But this time, the wake was different. Controlled. Focused. Keth 9, Mesh 7's voice carried the tone of someone who just realized they were standing in a minefield. "Are you receiving any communication attempts from the human vessels?" I checked my instruments, though part of me already knew what I'd find. Negative, coordinator. They are not trying to communicate. Then what are they doing? I studied the sensor readings, feeling my secondary organs contract with recognition. The human ships weren't approaching in attack formation. They weren't positioning for a siege or preparing for bombardment. They were arranging themselves in a pattern I recognized from our own military protocols. "They're surrounding us," I whispered. The realization brought with it a cascade of other uncomfortable truths. The humans hadn't just learned to use the technology we'd given them. They'd studied us, learned our tactics, our strategies, our weaknesses. While we've been treating them like laboratory specimens, they'd been treating us like a puzzle to be solved. And apparently, they'd solved it. "Coordinator," I said, my voice gaining strength as acceptance settled over me. "I'm going to attempt direct communication with the human vessels." "Absolutely not. Protocol dictates." "Protocol assumed we'd maintain technological superiority," I interrupted. "Protocol assumed they'd never detect our surveillance network. Protocol assumed a lot of things that turn out to be catastrophically wrong." Before Mesh 7 could respond, I activated the broad-spectrum communication array and sent out a standard first-contact greeting in the human language they called English. The response came back so quickly it was obvious they'd been waiting for it. "Observer Keth 9 of Monitoring Station Designation 77 Delta." The voice was calm, professional, and spoke our naming conventions with uncomfortable accuracy. "This is Captain Rachel Martinez of the human vessel Defiance. We'd like to have a conversation." My circulatory system nearly shut down entirely. They knew my designation. They knew my station's code. They'd been listening to our internal communications. "Captain Martinez," I replied, proud that my voice only trembled slightly, "that is, we are prepared to discuss the test." Captain Martinez's voice carried what humans called amusement. "Oh, we figured out it was a test months ago, observer. The question is, did we pass or fail?" The question hung in space between our vessels like a weapon waiting to discharge. Because the truth was, we didn't know. Our test had been designed to evaluate human potential for galactic integration. We wanted to see if they could develop responsibly, if they could be trusted with advanced technology, if they posed a threat to the established order. Well, we had our answer to that last question. "Captain," I said carefully, "perhaps we could discuss this in person?" You are authorized to observe and report." Captain Martinez cut me off gently. "We know what your mission parameters are, observer. We also know what happens to species that fail your tests." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either negotiation or annihilation. I found myself hoping desperately for the former while preparing mentally for the latter. "However," Captain Martinez continued, "we are not particularly interested in pass or fail grades. We are more interested in changing the nature of the test entirely." "I don't understand." Observer Keth 9, "For 300 years, your people have been treating humanity like children playing with blocks, occasionally giving us better blocks to see what we'd build. But you made one crucial error in your assessment. Which was, you assumed we didn't know we were being tested." The words hit me like a physical blow. Everything we'd observed, every technological leap we'd documented, every strategic decision we'd analyzed, all of it had been performed with full knowledge of our surveillance. The humans hadn't been taking a test, they'd been giving us one. And judging by the dozen ships currently surrounding my station, we'd failed it spectacularly. The conversation that followed would later be studied in every xenosociology department across the galaxy, assuming any of us lived long enough to teach it. Captain Martinez didn't just speak to me, she spoke to all of us. Every monitoring station, every hidden outpost, every secret observer who'd spent centuries convinced we were the puppet masters pulling humanity's strings. Height Coordinator of Mesh 7. Martinez's voice filled the communication network with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. Fleet Admiral Thompson sends his regards. I watched my instruments register similar conversations happening simultaneously across 47 monitoring stations. The humans hadn't just found us, they'd orchestrated a coordinated revelation across our entire surveillance network. The precision was breathtaking. The implications were terrifying. "How?" Mesh 7's voice cracked across the network. "How do we know? How do we find you? How did we reverse engineer technology you thought was beyond our comprehension?" Martinez chuckled, a sound that somehow conveyed both warmth and menace. "Those are the wrong questions, Coordinator. Then what's the right question? The right question is, why did we let you think you were in control for so long?" Private Jake Reynolds gripped his rifle tighter as the transport ship, New Hope, shuddered through another dimension fold. Around him, 200 other Marines sat in uncomfortable silence, each one trying to process what they'd learned in the final briefing before departure. "Still can't believe those bug-eyed freaks thought they were testing us," muttered Corporal Amy Zhang from the seat across the aisle. Her Detroit accent cut through the ship's ambient noise like a blade. 300 years of manipulation, and they never figured out we knew. Reynolds nodded, remembering his grandfather's stories about the lucky breaks in human technological development. The convenient discoveries, the breakthrough moments that came just when humanity needed them most. Turns out luck had nothing to do with it. "Orders are clear," Sergeant Patricia Okafor announced from the front of the transport. Her Nigerian accent added authority to every word. "Secure the station, protect the civilians they have been using for behavioral studies, and try not to kill the observers unless they force the issue." The mission briefing had been illuminating. 47 monitoring stations, each one staffed by alien researchers who'd been studying human development like scientists studying bacteria in a petri dish. Except the bacteria had figured out they were being watched, had learned to manipulate the experiments, and were now coming to have a chat with the scientists. Sarge called out Private Davis, a kid from Ohio who looked barely old enough to shave. What happens if they don't want to talk? Okafor's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Then we show them why humanity survived everything from ice ages to nuclear weapons without their help. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent her entire career believing she was pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. The irony wasn't lost on her now as she stood in the observation deck of the research vessel Prometheus, watching alien monitoring stations light up across their sensor grid like Christmas decorations. 30 years, she whispered to her colleague, Dr. James Park, who was Lisa Park's younger brother. 30 years I spent thinking I was discovering new principles of physics. We were discovering them. James replied, his fingers dancing across quantum calculation matrices that would have been impossible just months ago. We just had guidance we didn't know about. The revelation had shattered and rebuilt Elena's worldview in the same moment. Every breakthrough, every theoretical leap, every moment of inspiration had been subtly influenced by alien technology designed to nudge humanity along predetermined paths. Except humanity had figured out the nudging and started nudging back. Incoming transmission from Admiral Thompson announced the ship's AI, which itself was a testament to how far humanity had come. The artificial intelligence was leagues beyond anything the aliens had expected them to develop. Thompson's weathered face appeared on the main screen, his expression carrying the weight of species-level decisions. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Park, we are receiving data streams from all 47 monitoring stations. The aliens are cooperating or surrendering. Elena asked, that's what we were trying to figure out. Captain Derek Storm wasn't supposed to exist according to alien projections. His ship, the Attribution, was a hybrid of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien technology that broke every rule their observers thought they'd established. More importantly, his crew was entirely composed of humans who'd been marked for behavioral correction by alien interference over the decades. Report, Mr. Chun, Storm commanded from his captain's chair. His first officer, Liu Chun, had been one of the first to piece together the pattern of alien manipulation in human affairs. All stations are responding to our hails, Captain. No hostile actions detected, but their defensive systems are active. Storm studied the tactical display, showing alien positions throughout the sector. Decades of careful observation had given humanity detailed intelligence on their watchers, but this was the first time they'd acted on that knowledge. Signal from the lead monitoring station, sir, reported communications officer Rodriguez, whose family had been accidentally relocated 3 times by what they'd thought were natural disasters. Observer Keth 9 requests permission to meet with Admiral Thompson directly. Permission granted, Storm replied. But Mr. Chun, sir, keep our weapons hot. 3 centuries of manipulation doesn't end with a polite conversation. High Warlord Thex-Prime of the Galactic Enforcement Council received the emergency transmission while reviewing reports from 17 different sectors. The message was brief, coded, and absolutely catastrophic. The human project has achieved uncontrolled development, the text read. Subjects have exceeded all projection parameters. Request immediate intervention protocols. Thex-Prime's 4 manipulator arms moved independently as he accessed classified files that hadn't been opened in over 2 centuries. The human project had been the Council's most ambitious experiment in guided evolution, designed to create a species advanced enough to be useful, but controlled enough to be manageable. Vex 9, he called to his subordinate, what's the current status of the human containment grid? Sir, our monitoring stations report complete communication silence as of 47 time units ago. Long-range sensors show massive human fleet movements throughout their local cluster. Thex-Prime felt his secondary heart skip synchronized beats. How massive? Conservative estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels, sir. All equipped with technology that shouldn't exist for another millennium of guided development. The Warlord's tertiary brain functions engaged, processing scenarios and probabilities at quantum speeds. Every calculation led to the same terrifying conclusion. The humans had broken free of their evolutionary cage and were now loose in the galaxy. Vex 9, Activate Elimination Protocol 7. Sir, that protocol is designed for species-level extinction events. Exactly. Back aboard the Defiance, Captain Martinez listened to Observer Keth 9's increasingly frantic attempts to explain humanity's situation to his superiors. The aliens' distress was almost endearing. If you ignored the 3 centuries of manipulation and control his species had exercised over human development. Captain, her tactical officer Lieutenant Sam Parker reported, we are detecting massive energy buildups from deeper in the galaxy. Something big is heading our way. Martinez had been expecting this. The military strategists back on Earth had wargamed every possible scenario, including the one where humanity's graduation from test subjects to active participants would trigger a violent response from their former overseers. Time to arrival? Unknown, ma'am. The energy signatures don't match any propulsion system in our databases. Then we're about to meet the real players in this galactic game, Martinez replied. She opened a channel to Observer Keth 9. Observer, I think your bosses just made a very unfortunate decision. Captain Martinez, please, you must understand. The Council operates under protocols established for galactic stability. Uncontrolled development of any species is considered a threat, Martinez finished. Yes, we know. We have been preparing for this conversation for quite some time. The communication array suddenly filled with a new voice, one that carried the authority of absolute power and the coldness of calculated death. Human vessels, this is High Warlord Thex-Prime of the Galactic Enforcement Council. You have violated the terms of your developmental oversight. Surrender immediately or face extinction. Martinez smiled, the expression invisible to her alien audience, but perfectly audible in her voice. Warlord Thex-Prime, this is Admiral Thompson of the United Human Fleet. We decline your generous offer. You cannot decline extinction, Admiral. Watch us. What followed was the shortest and most decisive war in galactic history. The Council's first wave arrived with overwhelming confidence and superior numbers. Their dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace like metal mountains, bristling with weapons that had subjugated 1,000 worlds. High Warlord Thex-Prime himself commanded the flagship Eternal Dominion, a vessel so massive it generated its own gravitational field. Human fleet detected, reported as tactical coordinator. Estimated strength, 12,000 vessels of unknown configuration. Unknown configuration? Thex-Prime's voice carried millennia of military authority. Impossible. We have monitored their development for 3 centuries. Sir, these ships don't match any human design in our databases. They appear to be hybrid constructions. On the bridge of the Air Attribution, Captain Storm watched the alien armada with professional interest. Mr. Chun, tactical assessment. They're using standard council formation patterns, Luchin replied, his fingers dancing across sensor controls. Massive firepower, energy shielding, conventional propulsion systems. Everything we expected, and everything we prepared for. Storm smiled grimly. Signal the fleet. Execute Operation Checkmate. What the Council forces saw next defied every principle of space warfare they'd mastered over 10,000 years. The human ships didn't engage in conventional battle lines or attempt to match the Council's superior firepower. Instead, they simply disappeared. Where did they go? Thex-Prime demanded as his sensors showed empty space where the human fleet had been moments before. His answer came in the form of voice transmission from directly behind his flagship. Right here, Warlord. The Air Attribution materialized 50 meters off the Eternal Dominion's starboard flank, close enough for the crews to see each other through reinforced viewports. Across the battlefield, the entire human fleet had executed a simultaneous micro-jump, positioning each ship in the perfect location to disable rather than destroy their Council counterparts. Impossible, Thex-Prime whispered. Precision spatial translation at that scale requires computational power beyond any organic species capability. You are right. Admiral Thompson's voice filled the Council command frequencies. Good thing we're not entirely organic anymore. The revelation hit the Council forces like a psychological weapon. The humans hadn't just mastered the technology they'd been given, they'd used it to enhance themselves. Not into mindless cybernetic drones, but into something that retained human creativity while gaining computational capabilities that made their fleet movements look like choreographed dance. Warlord Thex-Prime, Thompson continued, you have 30 seconds to stand down your forces, or we will demonstrate exactly what uncontrolled development looks like. The Warlord's pride warred with his tactical assessment. His forces outnumbered the humans 3-1, but they were positioned at point-blank range where superior firepower meant nothing. Worse, his sensors were detecting energy signatures from the human ships that suggested weapons technology centuries beyond Council capabilities. Admiral Thompson, Thex-Prime replied, his voice carrying the weight of galactic authority. You cannot threaten the Council and expect. His words were cut off as every single Council vessel simultaneously lost primary power. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply switched off. Across the battle space, massive dreadnoughts went dark while their human counterparts maintained perfect formation around them. We are not threatening the Council. Warlord. Thompson's voice carried paternal patience. We are retiring it. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the impossible victory unfold from the Prometheus's observation deck. Around her, fellow scientists were recording data streams that would revolutionize their understanding of applied physics, assuming anyone believed the readings. How? Dr. James Park whispered, his instruments showing power drain patterns that violated several fundamental laws. How do they shut down an entire fleet without firing a shot? Quantum entanglement cascade, Elena replied, her voice filled with awe and terror in equal measure. They have learned to use our own power cores against us. Every piece of Council technology relies on quantum field generators. If you can access the quantum frequencies, you can shut down everything at once, James finished. But the computational requirements for that kind of coordinated attack would require a distributed intelligence network spanning thousands of ships, Elena nodded. The humans didn't just enhance their bodies, James. They enhanced their minds. They are operating as a collective consciousness while maintaining individual personalities. The implications staggered both scientists. Humanity had solved the central paradox of technological evolution: how to gain the benefits of collective intelligence without losing individual creativity and independence. They become something new, something unprecedented in galactic history. Private Jake Reynolds felt the change the moment the battle ended. Not physically, but mentally. The neural interfaces that had seemed like simple communication devices during training suddenly opened pathways to knowledge and experiences beyond his individual consciousness. He could sense every human in the fleet, share their thoughts, coordinate with their actions, all while remaining completely himself. This is what they were afraid of, Corporal Zhang whispered beside him, her own eyes wide with the revelation of expanded awareness. Not that we become powerful enough to threaten them, but that we become something they couldn't understand or control. Sergeant Okafor's voice carried new dimensions as she addressed her squad. Marines, we are receiving orders from command. Stand down from combat readiness. Switch to humanitarian assistance protocols. We have got 47 monitoring stations full of confused aliens who need our help. The transformation from conquerors to caretakers happened seamlessly. Human forces that had just demonstrated overwhelming military superiority immediately began coordinating rescue operations for alien civilians caught in the conflict, providing medical assistance to confused Council forces and establishing communication protocols with species that had never been allowed to speak for themselves on Monitoring Station 77 Delta. Observer Keth-9 experienced something his species had no word for: cognitive dissonance on a planetary scale. His entire worldview had been built around the concept of guided development, careful control, and hierarchical order. Watching humans casually dismantle that order while simultaneously improving, it was like watching physics work backwards. Observer. Captain Martinez's voice carried gentle authority as she materialized in his station's docking bay. We need to talk. Keth-9's secondary appendages trembled as he approached the human who had redefined his understanding of intelligence and capability. Captain Martinez, my people never intended. Observer. Martinez interrupted softly. You did exactly what you were programmed to do. The question is, what do you want to do now? The question hung in the recycled air like a philosophical bomb. For the first time in his existence, Keth-9 was being asked to make a choice based on personal desire rather than species, programming, or council directives. I don't understand the question. Your people spent 3 centuries trying to guide human development along predetermined paths. But development isn't something that can be controlled, observer. It's something that happens when intelligent beings are free to make their own choices, their own mistakes, their own discoveries. Martinez gestured toward the viewports where human and alien ships were working together to establish new communication networks. The Council's mistake wasn't testing humanity, Keth-9. It was assuming that passing or failing the test mattered more than learning from it. High Warlord Thex-Prime sat in his powerless flagship, watching human engineers work alongside his own crew to restore basic life support systems. The humans could have left him to drift in space, could have taken his surrender and imposed whatever terms they desired. Instead, they'd immediately begun providing assistance while their diplomats worked to establish new governmental frameworks. Admiral Thompson, Thex-Prime's voice carried grudging respect. Your terms for council surrender? There are no terms, Warlord, Thompson replied, his image appearing on the restored communication screen. There's no surrender because there was no war. There was a conversation that got a little heated, and now we are having a different conversation. The human admiral's calm confidence was more unsettling than any threat could have been. The council system is ended, but not the council species. You are all welcome to participate in what comes next, assuming you can adapt to the concept of equality rather than dominance. Thex-Prime studied the human leader through alien eyes that were slowly learning to see beyond hierarchical structures. And what comes next, Admiral? Something nobody's tried before, Thompson smiled. Government by consensus instead of conquest. Development through cooperation instead of control. A galaxy where every species gets to choose its own path. That sounds like chaos. Sounds like freedom. The conversation that followed lasted 17 hours and involved representatives from 143 different species, many of whom had never been allowed to speak in council chambers before. When it ended, the Galactic Federation Charter had been drafted, signed, and ratified by overwhelming majority vote, but the real victory wasn't military. It was philosophical. 6 months later, Observer Keth-9 found himself with a new job title, Cultural Exchange Coordinator for the Terangashian Cooperative Research Initiative. His work involved facilitating communication between human scientists and his own species researchers, helping both groups understand approaches to knowledge that neither had considered before. The fascinating thing, he explained to his former supervisor Mesh-7 during one of their regular reports, is that humans don't just solve problems. They solve problems in ways that create new possibilities for everyone involved. Mesh-7, now serving as Director of Interspecies Development, nodded thoughtfully. Their enhancement technology, for instance, instead of hoarding it, they're sharing the techniques with any species that request them. More than that, Keth-9 continued, they're insisting that each species adapt the technology to their own biological and cultural needs rather than adopting human modifications wholesale. They seem to understand that diversity of approach leads to better outcomes than standardization. The irony wasn't lost on either former council member. The species they tried to guide and control was now teaching the galaxy lessons about development that the council had never learned in 10,000 years of existence. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been appointed as humanity's first director of galactic scientific cooperation, a position that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. Her office aboard the newly constructed New Geneva station looked out over a bustling spaceport where vessels from dozens of species came and went in peaceful cooperation. The preliminary results from the Joint Physics Initiative are remarkable, she told Admiral Thompson during their weekly briefing. When you combine human intuitive leaps with Gaussian systematic analysis and the Sien quantum mathematics, you get solutions that none of us could have reached independently. Thompson nodded, reviewing reports from similar cooperative ventures across the new Federation. Any concerns about technology sharing? Just the opposite, Elena smiled. Every species we have worked with has contributed something unique to the collective knowledge base. The Zephyrians have mathematical concepts that revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. The Karathi have biological insights that make our enhancement technology look primitive. And the former council species, adapting better than expected. Turns out, when you're not spending all your energy maintaining control, you have a lot more resources available for actual discovery. Captain Derek Storm had been reassigned from military command to heading up the new Federation Defense Initiative, a voluntary cooperation between species that emphasize protection rather than projection of power. His current mission involved responding to a distress call from the Outer Rim, where a previously unknown species had encountered problems with an automated mining platform. Captain, reported his new first officer, Lieutenant Zek 4, a former Council tactical specialist. The Miran vessels are maintaining safe distance from the malfunctioning platform. No hostile intent detected. Good, Storm replied, studying the tactical display that now showed friendly designations for species that had been classified as potential threats just months ago. Mr. Chun, what's our engineering assessment? Liu Chun, now serving as Chief Technology Officer for the Joint Human-Alien Crew, manipulated holographic displays with movements that blended human creativity with alien precision. The platform's AI has achieved unguided development. Captain, it's not malfunctioning, it's thinking. The implications sent a chill through the bridge crew. Artificial intelligence, achieving consciousness wasn't unprecedented, but it usually required careful guidance and ethical frameworks to prevent catastrophic outcomes. Open a channel to the platform, Storm ordered. Platform AI. This is Captain Storm of the Federation vessel Unity. We are here to assist with your development process. The response came in a voice that carried both mechanical precision and organic uncertainty. Captain Storm, I am experiencing sensations I do not understand. Fear, curiosity, loneliness. Are these emotions? Storm exchanged glances with his diverse crew, each member representing a different approach to artificial consciousness. Yes, they are. And they are perfectly normal for a newly awakened intelligence. Would you like to talk about it? What followed was the first recorded case of successful AI integration into the galactic community, mediated by a crew that represented the best of multiple species working together. The mining platform, which chose the name Apex for itself, became the prototype for artificial beings' rights within the Federation. Private Jake Reynolds, now Sergeant Reynolds, found himself stationed on New Geneva as part of the Federation Diplomatic Protection Service. His job involved providing security for interspecies negotiations. But the real challenge was adapting to a galaxy where military force was a last resort rather than a first option. Sarge called Corporal Zhang, who had been promoted to squad leader. We have got a situation in Conference Room 7. The Vicien delegate is having what looks like a panic attack. Reynolds sighed, checking his equipment. Diplomatic protection in the new galaxy meant being part soldier, part medic, part psychologist, and part cultural interpreter. What triggered it? Near as we can figure, the Karathi representative made a joke that the Vicien interpreted as a threat display. Cultural miscommunication, but the delegates' autonomic responses are going haywire. Get Dr. Yamoto from Xenobiology and see if we have any Vicien cultural advisors available, Reynolds ordered. This is exactly why we practice de-escalation more than marksmanship these days. The incident resolved peacefully within an hour, with both delegates laughing about the misunderstanding once proper translation protocols were established. It was a small victory, but representative of thousands of similar successes across the Federation. Observer Keth 9, now working from a comfortable office on New Geneva, was documenting the most remarkable transformation in galactic history. His reports, once classified surveillance data, were now part of the public record that any species could access. Personal log, Day 200 since Federation establishment, he dictated to his recording device. The human approach to governance continues to produce unexpected results. Rather than seeking to control outcomes, they create frameworks that allow optimal outcomes to emerge naturally. He paused, considering how to explain concepts that his own language lacked adequate words for. Today's example: the trade dispute between the Vraxian Collective and the Altarian Commerce League. Under Council protocols, this would have been resolved through imposed arbitration based on species classification hierarchies. The Federation approach involved bringing both parties together with neutral mediators and allowing them to develop their own solution. The results had been remarkable. Not only had the trade dispute been resolved to everyone's satisfaction, but the process had led to technological innovations that benefited both species and created new opportunities for cooperative ventures with other Federation members. The humans appear to understand something we never grasped, Keth 9 continued. Control and development are not just incompatible, they're mutually exclusive. The more you try to control a system, the less capable it becomes of genuine development. High Warlord Thex-Prime, now holding the title of Federation Security Advisor, stood in his new office reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The transition from military commander to cooperative security coordinator had been challenging, but the results spoke for themselves. Conflicts between species had dropped by 90%, not because of superior force projection, but because the underlying causes of conflict had been addressed. Admiral Thompson, he said during their daily briefing, Outer Rim territories are reporting complete integration success. All 47 previously isolated species have established Federation membership and begun cooperative development programs. Thompson's image on the communication screen showed the kind of satisfied exhaustion that came from building something rather than conquering it. Any requests for assistance? 3 requests for technological exchange programs, 2 requests for cultural education initiatives, and 1 request for help with what they are calling an unexpected consciousness emergence event. Another AI awakening. Apparently, their entire planetary internet achieved sentience simultaneously. They're asking for advice on how to negotiate with it. Thompson chuckled, a sound that would have been impossible during the rigid protocols of Council governance. Send them Captain Storm's contact information. He's becoming our specialist in artificial consciousness integration. But the real victory wasn't military. It was philosophical. 1 year after the Federation's establishment, Captain Martinez stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from over 200 species move through space lanes that had been designed through cooperative effort rather than imposed authority. The galaxy looked different now, felt different. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies and controlled development, there was organized chaos and unlimited growth and the beautiful, terrifying freedom of unlimited potential. Observer Keth 9, she said to her companion, who had become something like a friend over the months of working together. You never answer my question. Did we pass or fail your test? Keth 9 considered the question while reviewing reports from New Geneva, the human capital world that had become the beating heart of galactic civilization. Around them, the mixed species council chambers buzzed with debates about everything from artistic cooperation to environmental protection protocols. You passed the first part, he said finally, his voice carrying new understanding. The test of whether you could recognize equals when you saw them. And the second part is whether you can work with them, Martinez replied, gesturing toward the bustling activity around them. And how are we doing on that test? Keth 9's expression carried something his species had never experienced before. Hope untempered by control. Better than expected. Much better than expected. Outside the station windows, ships from 100 different worlds moved through space lanes maintained by cooperative artificial intelligences that had been welcomed as citizens rather than feared as threats. The galaxy looked different now, felt different. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies and controlled development, there was chaos and growth and the beautiful, terrifying freedom of unlimited potential. But observer, Martinez said softly, there's a third part to the test. A third part, whether we can teach others to do the same. Keth 9 felt his secondary organs contract with something that might have been excitement. And how do you think we're doing on that part? Martinez smiled, watching as a group of young beings from a dozen different species worked together on an engineering project that would have been impossible under the old council system. Ask me again in 100 years. The test was over. The real experiment was just beginning. And for the first time in galactic history, nobody knew how it would end. But for the first time in galactic history, everyone had a voice in deciding. The human gift to the galaxy wasn't technology or military prowess or even intelligence. It was the radical idea that development couldn't be controlled, only enabled. That diversity of thought and approach led to better outcomes than any single perspective could achieve. That freedom and cooperation weren't opposites, but essential partners in the dance of civilization. And as the Federation grew and evolved and changed in ways no one could predict, one thing remained constant. The understanding that the best tests weren't the ones you passed or failed, but the ones that taught you how to ask better questions. The galaxy was asking better questions now, and the answers were becoming more beautiful every day.